Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I am back with another of my box set unboxing videos. I had a lot of fun doing the video for the D&D basic game for D&D 3.5, and so I thought I would just sort of, again, I'm not going to necessarily make this a regular, every, Monday, for example, I'm going to do one of these videos, but again, it was something that I thought was enjoyable, so why not do it here again? Today I'm going to be looking at the D&D Essentials starter set from 2010. So this is for D&D 4th edition. This is when they were sort of not... revising is probably not the right word. Or at least not in the context of what we think of when we think of the revision from 3 to 3.5. But basically, with 4th edition in 2010, they admitted that again, playtesting was not up to the best standards, which was the same issue that they had with 3rd edition as well. So a lot of the higher level things sort of got out of hand. Some of the monster stats weren't necessarily the most balanced, and some of the classes weren't well balanced either when you got into higher levels and you combine certain things. So they decided to release this D&D Essentials brand. The Essentials brand was also designed to be products at a lower price point to make getting into the new version of the game financially more viable than necessarily going and trying to get all of the hardcovers. So this set consisted of 3 box sets if you include the starter set. So you had the starter set, the Dungeon Master's kit, and the Monster Vault. And then you had your player's books and your rule book as being these sort of slightly larger than pocket size, pocket book sort of thing, or pocket paperback novel sort of thing. A little bit bigger than that, but they were, again, you for half the price of the player's handbook, you can get the Heroes of the Fallen Lands book, which gives you all of these traditional races and the traditional classes. So in my opinion, it was an underrated product line, and I actually really liked the idea behind it. I guess for context, Pathfinder today re-releases many of their older books in these pocket-sized versions, similar to what we had for D&D Essentials. So it's sort of like they basically, I think, kind of got the idea from that. But anyway, today we're here to talk about the starter set. So the first thing is this is the packaging, especially on the front here, is very much designed to look like the red box from the 80s. I think it was. It was basically the Frank Menser version of the D&D basic rules. This was the box they had. So they got the Larry Elmore art, which is really fantastic art. I absolutely love this. And there's a couple different lines of thinking, and it's definitely designed to appeal to someone's sense of nostalgia. So they see this sort of you have someone who grew up playing the basic expert rules, may have gotten away from D&D. They're in a bookstore and they see this box on the shelf. They recognize the logo, they recognize the art, and it might spark sort of a desire to get back into the game. Now, some people think that this was a blatant attempt to manipulate and try to deceive the customers, but I really don't think that is really a fair statement. Because aside from the front of the box and this stuff here, you flip it over and it is very obviously not the original basic set. So I think it's something that they did it for, had good intentions, and again, to sort of spark that sort of nostalgic, feeling in people. And I don't think it was meant to trick them into buying it, because you could easily just look at the back of the box and realize. But anyway, so there's sort of those different theories. For me, I absolutely love it, and I think that this is great. As sort of a side note, the Stranger Things starter set that Wizards of the Coast is going to be putting out also has like the same kind of like logo and sort of has like the same kind of box design. So they're basically doing the same thing. So if we're going to be overly critical of this box set for trying to appeal to people's sense of nostalgia, then, you know, maybe you have to kind of direct that same argument towards the new one when it comes out as well. But again, I think it's just a cool callback to a product that a lot of people grew up with. A lot of people was their introduction into the game, and it's just sort of an expression of the game's history. And I think that that's a really, really cool thing. So, like I said, we'll just have a look at it here. Now, this box set has been used a lot, so there is unfortunately some shelf wear. Nothing too bad. The paper here started to fold over a little bit just from being slid back in and out. But you know what? It builds character, and these things were meant to be used, so I'm going to use them. The flaps or the sides here all have just the same thing: Dungeons and Dragons fantasy role playing game. And then on the back it says, your first step on the road to adventure. This game box contains everything you need to start playing the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy role playing game. You can play an adventurous hero exploring a world of monsters and magic, or you can be the dungeon master who presents heroic quests, builds dungeons, and runs the monsters. In this game, anything is possible. The only limit is your imagination. So included in this are the Dungeon Master's book, which has the game rules and also contains the adventure. There's the player's book, which is actually a character creation sort of tutorial that takes the form of kind of like a choose your own adventure type of thing, which I thought was kind of neat. It comes with one double-sided sheet of die-cut hero and monster tokens, character sheets, and power cards, double-sided battle map, and 6 game dice. It also says that this is, the other products that you can get along with it. Not all of these were obviously going to be out at the time that this was released. This came out, I think, about a month or so before they released the Heroes of the Fallen Lands, and I think the Dungeon Master's kit may have come out at the same time. Another thing, actually, about the Essentials line, as I was just sort of thinking about this, is it really does kind of feel like it's a bit of a callback to the D&D basic rule set. Because again, if you just get that first player's handbook, you have humans, elves, dwarves, halflings, and then you have fighters, clerics, wizards, and rogues. And anyway, I just think it's kind of cool. So you have all that information there. The original retail price was $19.99 US and $23.99 Canadian. So the $19.99 US is the same price, I believe, that the 5th edition starter set retails for. Now, when I open this up, the one thing I do want to say is there are some of the tokens that we have here for the creatures and the player characters. Some of these tokens that are in here are actually from the Dungeon Master's kit. It had a couple sheets in there as well, and I just put them all in the one set. Mainly because there wasn't a lot of space for the punched out tokens. So when I look at the tokens, there's going to be more in this set just because of the way that things worked out, and I'm not going to try to go through and figure out which ones come from which. But let's just go ahead and open this up anyway, and we'll get right to it. So the first thing, like I said, I just put these in Ziploc bags to make them a little easier to work with. So the first things that we got here are, again, some of these the cardboard tokens, monster tokens. And yeah, I kind of want to say that this bag here has the ones from this set, but I could be wrong. I think it could still very much be a bit of a mix, but anyway, I'll just pull out a couple of these here. I'm not going to go through each and every single one, but you have some cool stuff here, so let's just go right into it. All right. All right, so just kind of pan down here a little bit. So here we just have some of the tokens. So we've got some different monster ones, and if they were duplicates, they would have a number on them, so you can sort of keep track of them when you get into combat. Now these ones here, where they have different things on different sides, were, now that I think of it, it's because it's been almost a decade actually since these first came out. So these double-sided ones were from the starter set, at least for a lot of these. Now, some of them did have something different on the other side, and I'll get to that in a moment. So you just have a few of the different creatures here. So yeah, those ones were definitely from the starter set. And then you had your player character ones. And so the player character ones, you have, so this is like a dwarf cleric, female dwarf cleric. And 4th edition D&D had a mechanic where when you're reduced to half your hit points or less, you become what's called bloodied. So to denote that with the tokens, aside from the ones that had like 2 different creatures on different sides, what you would do is just flip it over and it would have this red ring around it. So that's how you knew that you were bloodied. And then you have some like larger creature tokens that had the same thing, and the ones from like the DM's kit, for example, would also have the same thing. So there you've got some characters and monsters that have the bloodied, like the red ring on the back to denote that they're bloodied. So we got those there, and we'll just put these back in before I forget about them. But another cool thing that I actually really liked about this set, I was trying to find the one that I opened. One of the things I actually really liked about this set is it also came, I can pan this back up now a little bit, but it also came with these action point tokens. So you could earn action points to basically take another action. Not quite the same as inspiration now, but you could take like another standard action, move action, or stuff like that. But really, really cool just to have these, because as a DM, I forget this stuff all the time. So to basically say, okay, it's the start of the gaming session, each of you has one of these that you could use, and they basically, when they go to use their action point, they physically pass the action point token in, and they get to use it. So there you go. And I think that these are really, really cool, and I kind of wish, I have a friend of mine actually, he has a 3D printer, and he said he's going to make some tokens for inspiration in 5th edition, because I forget that stuff all the time. So just to have something like that, really, really super handy in my opinion. All right, up next in this bag here, so we have our basic dice, and these are just black dice. Nothing unique or interesting about them really. 4th edition D&D didn't really use percentile dice, so you had the D10 with the number 10 on them. And so you had your D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. They also released a D&D Essentials dice set that had 4d6, and nicer looking dice, but so you could get like an actual full set of dice shortly after this came out. There's also these cards here. So you've got some ability cards. These are kind of basically the modern day equivalent would be stuff like the spellbook cards, and these are essentially just that. It gives you like what your spells are, what their attacks and stuff are. The only thing about this set, it actually had blank spots for you to actually pencil in what your attack bonus and your like bonuses to damage would be, and that's cool, but I would never use that because I don't want to like write on these cards. But again, just really, really cool that they included these, and it makes again the starter set stuff really, really great, and it even comes with some like magic items. So you got like Bag of Holding, Magic Staff, Life Drinker, Great Axe, Chainmail. So just some really cool stuff, and again, modern day equivalent spellbook cards and magic item cards. But another really great addition to the starter set, and it's just one of those things that like I was way harsh on the D&D 5th edition starter set initially when I first did my very original video talking about it, and I did do a revised review of it, but the one thing I will still say is for the same price you just got so much more. I mean, forget the fact that I mixed some tokens there, but let's just say we have like this one sheet of tokens. You still have that, you have these cards, you have There's a map that I'll get to in a moment. So I just think that the starter set for earlier editions, I think, just had more to them, unfortunately, than the 5th edition ones. But anyway, just it is what it is, I guess. There's also a code here, or a card for basically getting another solo adventure, which is what they use for the player's book. I don't think this website exists anymore, so unfortunately I never got the chance to use it. Yeah, because it expired on December 31st, 2011, but still have it in with the box set because it came with the box set. We also have something that was kind of, standard at the time. We have just the advertising sheet, and it just gives you the breakdown of what's in the Essentials the Essentials product line. You also had blank character sheets because this version of the starter set had you making your own character. And they're one-page character sheets, so they don't have the most room, but it's still really cool. This character that I made using a like a photocopy. But anyway, just really, really cool that they would include blank sheets, because a lot of the starter sets that I have, like for 3rd edition and 3.5, all use pre-made characters. Whereas this one, you actually get to make them as you go. And you make them as you go using the player's book. And so the books in the actual box set itself, again, they sort of have that look similar to like the old Menster Basic and Expert rules sort of stuff, the BECME D&D, that became the Rule Cyclopedia, except this one here has the modern logo. So as you can see, the logos are different, and it's just sort of an updated version of that same scene with the fighter and the red dragons, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'm not going to go through this entire thing, but it, like I said, this introduces it essentially as an adventure. There's some flavor text here, so you're escorting just a wagon, protecting whatever goods are on there when goblins attack. And you go through, you read the flavor text, and then it gives you your options. So basically, you're trying to think of how you respond to this goblin charging at you. So it says, do you imagine pulling a weapon from the back of the wagon and leaping down to fight the goblin? Do you imagine casting a spell to blast the goblin? Do you imagine drawing a dagger, using the wagon for cover, and sneaking around to pick off the goblins? So this is, number 1. So you would go through, and essentially you just kind of go through and follow what this is. So let's just say we decide to be a fighter. So we go to option 2, you draw a weapon. Leaping into battle sounds like something a fighter would do. Fighter is one of the 4 main classes. Your class's primary definition of what your character can do in the game world, so it just goes over. And again, this is designed for like beginners sort of thing. If your character's a fighter, you might have trained as a soldier, blah blah blah. You don't wield magic, but over time you'll learn to perform feats of strength. So does this sound like what you have in mind for your character? If it is, then you proceed to number 7. So it gives you a breakdown of what the character, basically what the class does and what their sort of roles are. So we'll go to number 7. Number 7 says you pull a weapon from the wagon and run towards the nearest goblin. So when you make the attack roll, so it gets you to make an attack roll. It gives you so you use a minor action to draw the weapon, a move action to move towards the goblin. Each time it's your turn in combat, you can take 3 actions, a move, a minor, and a standard action. So when you make an attack, which is a standard action, you roll the 20-sided die and add your attack modifier. Here's how you determine your attack modifier. So you write down your character strength score, on your character sheet. If you're a human or dwarf, your strength is 18 and your modifier is +4. If you are an elf or halfling, your strength is 16. So this sort of gives you the stats that you would write in, and it shows you how to fill that in and sort of how you go along with it. So it just, again, and you go through this entire process to get your character made, and it just helps you fill in your sheet, which I think is, again, it's just really, really cool concept. And then we have the Dungeon Master's book, which just goes over the different rules, but it's basically, it gives you the rules as you're essentially running, it gives you the main stuff up front, and then it gets into the adventure itself, which follows directly from the encounter that you get in the solo adventure to create your character. So it continues directly from there, which again, I thought that was a really cool concept. I actually like that quite a bit. So we're just going to put this stuff back in the box just to get it out of the way. And the last thing that we have here is our map. So I'm just going to move this box set out of the way, and we will unfold the map and see what we have here. Once I get it unfolded. So again, two different sides to it. One is a dungeon, and then we have, so the first side is actually two different maps. So they got like the black border in between, and you know, coincidentally enough, that's where you do your first fold. So if you're using the outside maps, you can actually have them, you know, arranged properly. I'm going to keep this unfolded just because I don't want to keep folding and unfolding. But you have, this is the first encounter of the actual the adventure after you create your characters. So there's like a goblin ambush sort of thing. So you have like the crossroads, you have a partially ruined building, some rocks for cover, and then you have the outside of the monster lair. So you have like the caves, you got some campfires, you got like a little stream going through. There was actually a really cool video of like a celebrity D&D game, I guess you'd call it, but it had like Ed Greenwood, R.A. Salvatore, and I think Larry Elmore actually was the other person there, and then they had a couple people from the audience, which they were kind of cringy a little bit, but it was still a cool video, and they actually used this map. So it was actually an encounter that took place after the adventure in the starter set, which is actually pretty cool. And then when you flip it over, we have our dungeon. So again, this is actually, I've run this adventure a couple of different times, including running it for a group of players using 5th edition rules and just, you know, taking the monsters that are listed in the adventure for the 4th edition version, just pulling their 5th edition equivalents out of the monster manual, and it worked really well. So again, a really, really cool map here, so we'll just sort of go over it. We'll just sort of skim. And if there's any room that you want to see a little bit better, you can pause the video. I'll try to make sure that I get every room here. So you have stuff like some glowing runes, you have a magic circle, you know, an altar, and a lot of these things could actually be created with the dungeon tiles as well. Not all of the rooms, but quite a few of them can actually be made using the dungeon tiles that would come out later. You also have like a wizard's laboratory with bookshelves and stuff, but this room here is actually one of my favorites because the encounter here, it's got like a chessboard kind of look to it, and the whole thing is that the monsters that are in here are essentially they're constructs that look like other creatures, but they follow the rules for like moving like chess pieces, and the player characters they do as well. So wherever they first enter, whatever square they sort of step on, you know, where they move to or where they end their first turn on, I think in this room, indicates sort of what piece that they are. And I think, if I recall correctly, if they move the wrong way, I could be getting this entirely wrong. I might actually be mixing it up with something else. So let me just pull this out for a second before I make a complete and total fool of myself by getting this completely wrong. But the monsters are... That was the box, by the way. The monsters are completely and totally limited. Like they have to move as chess pieces, which, again, let's just see if I can find them here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, maybe the players are able to... Character who attempts to jump over the... Oh no, yeah, if you don't move the right way, then you would take damage. So I thought that was actually kind of cool. So you have the different chess pieces, and you would arrange the monsters basically based off of that. And yeah, they have to move like chess pieces, and once you get to like a square where you would like eliminate one of the other player pieces, or the, you know, the monster side would move towards where you are, then you basically you that's when you start your fighting. So just a really cool idea, and it's interesting for them to have this, you know, like in a starter set. I just think it's kind of a unique encounter that I don't recall really seeing anywhere else. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. And that's basically the D&D Essentials starter set. So for your $20, you know, or $24 if you're like me and you live in Canada, you get, I'd say you definitely get your money's worth. You know, you get a really great adventure, and I think that the adventure is completely, probably, you know, underrated for sure, and I don't think a lot of people actually got a chance to play it just based on the fact that, you know, it is D&D Essentials or 4th edition, and, you know, all the stigma that went along with it. But this is a really awesome box set. I love the idea of having your characters being created by having them choose how to go through the adventure. So they're all taking part in the same encounter. They all make their choices, and it helps you fill in your character sheet. It's just a really cool concept, I think. I like the idea of the solo adventure. You know, sort of gets you in the mood to keep going, I think, and that's, to me, that's just a really interesting way of doing things. You know, I like the, like I said, I like the adventure. I like all the things that are included. The, you know, spell cards, the magic item cards are great. The tokens are, again, a really cheap way to, you know, use miniatures in combat. And yeah, I think that this is just overall a really underrated product. Now, it's actually one of those things that has been getting more and more expensive as time has gone on. So it's, I think it's actually like kind of difficult to find this nowadays for a decent price. Like I saw a couple listings and they had it at like, you know, $70, $80, which, you know, as much as I love this, I would never pay that much money for it. But I think this was a really good starter set, and I still can't help but compare this starter set to the 5th edition one, which has the adventure book, the player's book, and the dice, and that's, you know, basically it. You know, for the same amount of money, you got so much more out of this set. And not that I dislike the 5th edition starter set. Like I said, I did a whole other video sort of trying to you know, make up for the way that I kind of bashed it originally. But I will say at the end of the day that from the starter sets that I own, I think that this is my overall favorite one, just for the value that you get, for the price that you pay, and again, just a really great adventure that I've run for multiple editions, and it works really well for all of them. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and if you played the D&D Essential Starter Set, let me know what some of your favorite memories of it are, like your encounters, what you thought of the solo adventure, and the characters that you made from that. And if you continue to play those characters even after the other rulebooks came out. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Take care.